probably start the event. It's already 5:05, and good evening, one and all. I think we are all friends of Professor Rajani, and we are here to remember him as a person and his life and what he has meant to each one of us. Because I don't think there is a single person who has not been touched by his presence in our lives. Whoever has come across him in their, either professional or personal lives, he has made an impact of sorts. So today's event has been put together by his friends at CUTN to celebrate the few years he spent with us, and most importantly to remember, recollect, and actually uh, enjoy what he meant to us. I am using this word enjoy deliberately because some of us have been speaking about him for the last 10 days, and we realized that he would not want any one of us to be in tears. He would not want any one of us to be feeling sad for what is happening. He lived a great life, and he has transformed all our lives in one way or the other. Especially the students, the kind of emotion that has come out from all of them, the outpouring of emotions from each one of them has mostly been with reference to how he has transformed the lives. CUTN, being in a rural area, and our first few batches of students were either from here or from small towns and villages. His presence here made a lot of difference to them. He was a fatherly figure who could be both strict and very loving. He took care of not just their emotional, well-being, but also took care of their language and how they should speak and behave, and all in his characteristic way, where he was not being obtrusive or trying to uh, push his way through very quietly. For a man who was extremely loud in his theater and in the way he would normally speak, I think the way he went about his agenda was very, very quiet. And today we are all here to kind of remember what he meant to us, and then go through a couple of these plays that he has directed for our students. This is our homage, this is our remembrance, this is how we want to remember Professor Rajani. So what we have put together is a few of us friends of Rajani at CUTN. There's nothing official about this meeting at all. We'll be sharing our feelings about him, about what he meant to us. We have asked for a panel discussion on the transformative power of theater, because looking back, we realized that if at all there has been, if we had to summarize Professor Rajani's contribution to CUTN's first few batches of students, it is in the transformation that he brought through uh, by using theater. Like, theater was his medium, and what he did was to transform the students. So we want to understand that and appreciate and celebrate that particular part. So we have a panel discussion. We have a recreation of some of his works, and we have sharing of memories by friends, colleagues, students. I think we were all his friends at some level, and we were all his children at some level, because I think irrespective of who he was speaking to, he always addressed us as a child. So without taking much further time, I would start off by requesting Professor B.P. Sanjay, the then Vice Chancellor here, who possibly was the one who was instrumental in bringing Professor Rajani to CUTN and introducing him to all of us. Professor Sanjay. Professor Sanjay?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. Do I do the video or the
Yes,
bandwidth
with the
allowed?
video, sir.
Uh, Good evening, everybody, and thanks, Madhurima, for organizing this. And it's a bit of a emotional. Hello.
Yes,
Am I?
sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Your video is not on, if I'm not mistaken.
A video is not on.
I can't see. Yes, please switch on your video, sir. It's not on.
It's on. Not. Oh. Okay. Yeah. Am I now visible?
Not yet. Not to me, at least.
Not visible at all.
What happened? Stop. It says stop video. Start video. Now, okay.
No, sir, you are still invisible.
Sir, are you around?
No, he is both.
Yeah, he's muted. I don't know why.
It's muted. Just send a message to him.
Camera is. One second. 1 second.
Sir, should we ask Professor Indra to go first while you sort out your? Uh, Professor Indra? Professor Indra?
She's on mute.
She's on mute. I can't find her.
Hello. At least in audio, am I?
Very much. You can go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Let's forget the video link for a while. Once again, I join friends of Rajani at CUTN, his umpteen well-wishers, friends, students all over the country and all over the world, perhaps, in paying our respects to Professor Rajani and his contributions in terms of what he meant to each one of us. My reflections are not necessarily, as immersive as many others who know him for a longer duration. It was in around 2009 when I was saddled with the responsibility of setting up a university in Tiruvarur. And it so happened that, among other things, there was a lot of compulsion for us to start the academic year within months of the establishment of the university. Justified or not, each one of us had to respond. And based on the advisory, we had a few friends. We decided that we would launch with the Department of English. And that is where, it so happened that, a few friends immediately suggested the name of Professor Rajani. Professor Rajani had by then retired as, the Tagore professor in University of Madras. And I decided to invite him, to Central University of Tamil Nadu, and immediately he accepted and joined us. Uh, for a person of his age, to come to a university which was just an idea in terms of nothing concrete was available, was something that you know we felt a bit diffident in inviting very eminent persons, because what would they think? There was nothing there. But no, Professor Rajani immediately decided to come and join us, and he started straight away his academic teaching. But within a few weeks, the other personality of Professor Rajani, because I frankly had not met Professor Rajani, therefore I could not immediately ask him more than what he was, meant for, as far as his teaching of English was concerned at CUTN. But nevertheless, slowly there was a lot of interaction. And at that time, it was me, one other teacher, Professor Jayaraman, and Nirmal Selvamani, and my PA. This was the university at that particular point in time. Therefore, we had a lot of time to interact. And that is when we discovered, and in his talk, that he was not only enthusiastic, but he also wanted to formulate something more as far as the students there were concerned. The first year we had a limited number of students, but it was in 2010 when we had other students come in, including a slightly enhanced enrollment for the program. That is when Rajani decided that, and also offered. There was one other issue as far as the university was concerned. I had to amplify the role of the few faculty that I had. And immediately, based on my interaction with Professor Rajani, we actually created a kind of a post of what we called it as cultural coordinator. And Rajani was appointed as the first cultural coordinator of the university. And since then, it was no stopping as far as the person was concerned. And in that town, and I'm sure that many of you know Tiruvarur for more reasons than one, but from an educational point of view, Tiruvarur was not in a position to boast anything more than being one of the probably a backward district in terms of its educational motivation or achievement. But that is when Rajani started, interacting with the students, shaping them, and formulated what we call as their first interest in theater, and groomed them, started talking to them, and put up short plays, rehearsals, and we also decided to kind of reach out to the 5 or 6 colleges in the region, held the first festival. Now that then from then on, as I said, participation in theater, competitions or theater festivals was kind of, became a very, what should I say, a natural instinct for the university. And this could not have happened without Rajani, who kind of, groomed the students. This is, something that we always remember. In that process, Rajani kind of, extended his role. We did not have a hostel. Then when we were discussing, I said that why not the fourth floor of the existing building made into a hostel. And immediately Rajani said that, sir, no issues, let the hostel be there. And he took control of the hostel, almost like a caretaker. And that also provided him with ample opportunities for making the students, get together, organize a few events, etc. So from that process, because the first batch of students in Tiruvarur were all from rural background, and I'm not trying to make any judgment on rural background as such, but the important thing was that given the rural background, there was a lot more that was needed from the students expected, etc. And this is where Professor Rajani came in. He literally transformed the students, not only in terms of whatever they could do academically, but be in a position of participating and presentations. And the association continued for a long time. And then, it was almost till the time I was there, uh, 2015, he was, very much active. And around 2015, uh, because of his age and wanting to get back to Coimbatore, he left us. So, uh, what can I think of him is something that others will probably also reflect. To me, the man, the students, and the institution has grown with the kind of support he has provided. Therefore, I would kind of ascribe to him a kind of a transformative personality with regard to the students that he was able to. I'm sure that rich tributes and appropriate respects will come from other panelists. Um, it is a bit of a shock to learn that he's no more with us. But the man, his association, is always ever alert sense of mind, and the kind of inputs he was able to provide to the students will always stay with us. I join many others in paying my humble respects to him as a colleague, and also, as Madhurima said, as a dear friend of Rajani. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
I hope I am audible.
Yes, we are.
Next we have Professor Indira with us to share her thoughts and memories of Professor Rajani. She's the former head of the Department of English, University of Madras. I humbly ask her to deliver her words with us.
Hello, good evening. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you can start.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I thank the organizers of the Tiruvarur Central University for asking me to speak in today's meeting of someone who has been dear to so many. I should also thank Professor Sanjay, who has given us almost a full map of how Rajani came to be part of the institution that Professor Sanjay came to head. So inducting Rajani in the pioneering days of the Central University, I feel very, very grateful to Professor Sanjay for taking that suggestion. At this point, I also remember with gratitude Professor V.S. Venkatramanan, the former head of the Department of English, Madras Christian College, whom I had invited to our department at Madras University to help with the MA and MPhil course. Professor V suggested that we should get Professor Rajani after his retirement. Of course, I had earlier spoken to him. Am I clear? Can I continue? Can I continue?
Yes, ma'am. You can continue.
Okay.
Very clear.
Yes.
Thank you. MS Dhoni,
Good.
MS Dhoni Instagrammed yesterday to asking us to consider him as retired from international cricket from 7/29 on India's Independence Day yesterday evening. COVID-19 perhaps put an end to his hopes of continuing his career for some more time. Dr. Rajani too was forced to retire thanks to the pandemic. Otherwise, he would have gone on. Even if there was no university to teach, he would have taught in the space. There is a similarity between MS Dhoni and Professor Rajani. Both of them performed selflessly for their respective teams, but were loath to take the palm for their victory in public. Dhoni used to receive the cup, hand it over to his jubilant teammates, and slid, or if I should use Shakespeare's word in Hamlet, slink from the scene. In 2002, when at the end of the first ever international conference on Indo-Australian studies that we organized, Professor Rajani produced the play, Louis Naura's play, Radiance, at the Museum Theatre, Chennai. It was witnessed by a whole host of Australians, headed by their High Commissioner in India, Penelope Wensley, and the entire team of Australian India Council, headed by the chairman, Michael Abbott, distinguished Australian theorists, writers, artists, students. The students produced from Madras University a stunning performance. It was a public performance. Professor Rajani was averse to accept any memento except taking a bow at the curtain call. It was hard for me to persuade him to receive a memento from Michael Abbott. The same thing happened 2 years later at the second conference in Delhi, second Australian conference. Two places were staged, one in Habitat Center, the other one in JNU. It witnessed the same situation. It was wonderfully received. And the High Commissioner, same High Commissioner, honored us with a dinner at her home. Dr. Rajani was producing plays ever since he joined the MCC department, I suppose. But most of them were on American themes by American dramatists. For example, Tennessee Williams. Some of it in the beginning, I used to think, was alien to the culture of our students. Very good editions of these plays were available, commentaries were available. They could be understood. But in the university department, when we started Australian and Canadian studies, they picked up plays to be performed from Australian and Canadian literatures. Their themes, their vocabulary, the idiom, the speech habits, everything was so incomprehensible. There was hardly any good annotated. I always wondered how he construed what they were saying. Then it struck me, whatever language they may be made in, there was only one language. And that language was the language of theatre, of which Professor Rajani was a past master. I am reminded of what Rahul Dravid said in his famous Sir Bradman oration delivered in the War Memorial in Canberra in 2011. He was talking about Indian cricket team, the present team, that just last 10 years, full of youngsters coming from different backgrounds, economic backgrounds, social backgrounds, linguistic backgrounds. They were multicultural. They did not know how to speak to another person because we don't have that kind of language. But Rahul Dravid said, between the wickets, they understood one language. That was the language of cricket. So if a single had to be converted into two, they ran it. Though they could not speak Hindi or Telugu. Rajani was like that to theatre. Professor Rajani had an uncanny ability to discover theatre lurking in everyone. When the poet laureate Ted Hughes died in 1998, I told him we were running a seminar and what he could do to mark that occasion. I asked him. He said, we would put up a play from the letters of Sylvia Plath and her husband Ted Hughes. How famous or infamous the couple were, all of us. And what a performance it turned out to be. Lee Cataldi, the Oxford-educated linguist and Australian writer in our department as writer in residence under the Asia Link, she wrote a beautiful article in the Hindu complimenting it. I still have that. Professor Rajani was truly egalitarian in spirit. This sentence I wrote, but the Hindu had edited that sentence. I'm happy that I could include that sentence now. He was truly egalitarian in spirit. Why? Because he would never accept a comfort which was not going to be available to his troop and team. When we went to Delhi for the second international conference, we were offered airfare, the four of us, Professor Eugenie Pinto, the Prima Mobile for Australian Studies, Professor Prasad, who made it possible for me to get Professor Rajani under the Tagore chair in Madras University, and myself and Professor Rajani. We were offered airfare and AC 3-tier sleeper to all our students, including our peon, Kodandam, whom I took to Delhi, along with a doctor, because we were taking a big team. And to speak of winter, Delhi was unusual. Our students were not used to that. He declined the airfare. He chose to travel with his young team. Professor Rajani's commitment and work ethic are part of the eternal verities. He was least fussy about material comforts. He stayed with me for 12 years, nearly. He was there in 12 years and I was there for nearly 10 years of his service there. He saw the pole star at all times and has become a star in the academic firmament now, which is not a cliche. Thank you very much, Professor Madhurima and Professor Sanjay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Indira ma'am. I hope I'm audible. Thanks a lot. So next we have Professor Nirmal Ramani with us, and he has been heading this UTN English department since its inception, and he has always been a great supporter of Waterfront Repertory Theatre that Rajani sir put together. Over to you, sir. Please share your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much, Devlina. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Devlina?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah. Dear friends of Rajani of CUTN, Dr. Madhurima, Professor BP Sanjay, thank you very much for asking me also to share my memories of Rajani sir in this event. Dear Rajani sir, or love, in this curtain call, kindly accept, along with the ovations of others, my apostrophe also. I'm one of those fortunate few who had known you in the heyday of your life, the 70s. In 1976, when you walked into my MA class in Selyu Hall, in your blue denims and t-shirt, little did I realize that our lives would twine the way it did the past 4 decades. In the classroom, You were a high lilting tenor voice that crescendoed in the climatic moments of a British poem or an American play, often about gender relations. Your theatrical readings rendered commentaries redundant. You allowed me the privilege of collaborating with you on editorial projects, often gendered too. You lavished your patience on drafts of value education and Tamil translations, all for love. You gave me writing, sir. You knew that teaching was giving. A great giver you were. To burn yourself out to play Pygmalion, you readily came to CUTN when I called you in 2010. And believe me, you did it exceedingly well. Check with Professor Sanjay or Dr. Thanga Jayaraman for that matter, if this is hyperbole. I thank Professor Sanjay for accepting my suggestion to take you on board at CUTN. You lost yourself to find untapped potential. Even many MCCNs may not know that the origin of the Harmattan Theatre Company of New York could be traced to your room, 100 St. Thomas's Hall, MCC, where you trained in the early 80s director May Joseph in the nuances of theatre. Words such as teaching, training, tutoring, and coaching, they all fail miserably because your interaction with the student was a kind of, shall I say, kenosis, a sort of emptying of oneself in order to shape up the others. Kenotic giving beyond the classroom, beyond working hours, a 24/7 praxis. Fearlessly, undeterred, you chose to continue to teach your class in room 1 in MCC when assailants tried to force you out of the class. Now, where does that courage to put duty before life spring from? You sensed our need and helped us before we asked you. Your gifts you shared with us like the Tamil chieftains. Slow you were to take anything from anyone, even from family. Your inheritance you willingly relinquished. But did you owe the Himalayas anything? Why did you visit the mountain year after year? Did I say visit? Oh, no, it was a performance than a visit, right? Unprepared and unplanned and fraught with all kinds of risks. Walking in the cold regions of the mountains in your sandals, you nearly lost your big toe to severe frostbite. In 2013, you narrowly survived the fury of one of the worst natural disasters by advancing your journey from Haridwar to Delhi by a day. I had asked you more than once why you had to put yourself through such ordeals. At a rare moment, when you were overcome with passion, with wide open eyes, you raised your head as you would when you had to deliver a climactic poetic line, not to shout it out, but to confide to me sotto voce, the mountain is calling me. Mm-hmm. I didn't fully understand then what you meant. Now, I know you were not visiting any shrine of a deity because the mountain itself was your deity, your ancestor who called you. Was the ancestral call important to you because the family was sacred to you? Is that why you dreamt of an egalitarian family where the woman enjoyed a non-dominant loving relationship with a man and her children? Is that why you waged a culture war against dominant gender relations with your theatrical Brahmastra? Did you have to wage a war for love? Come on. Is that why you were so close to me and my family? A father figure to me. Is that why you made an exception in your women-centered theater and invited me to play Ted Hughes in your play? Is that why you made an exception and spent time with my family and groomed my daughters, Pardini and Madhini? Is that why you cast Pardini in a role in your play? Is that why you attended my daughter's weddings, though you shunned gatherings and public events? How would I know that Madhini's wedding on 30th December last year would be your last public appearance? How can we return your love? You leave your audience completely mystified. They've made their own images of you in their own ways. In this and in your passion for drama, You were not unlike James Dyke in the one-act play, The Valiant. You would not have imagined when you played that part in your BA days in Coimbatore that you also would leave people guessing as to who you really were. To me, you were a dreamer. You dreamt of a primal society built on the bedrock of love, a society in which ancestral ties were stronger. Women were not subjected to unjust dominance, a society of givers. And that is why you challenged the state society you lived in. In a world of expediency, corruption, and self-interest, you were uncompromisingly principled. Fearlessly, you spoke truth to power, just like the primal people. Was there any other sexagenarian around who could have matched you when you defied all transport conventions by choosing to moped all the way from the University of Madras to Coimbatore? Probably you got that physical culture gene from your Himalayan ancestor. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was your life a poem on the protein ways of personifying love? Was the life of love your holy grail? How did you imagine that an explosive atonal theater could play out love? How did your Prospero-esque books and magic cloak transmute disharmony into harmony? We really don't know how to emote your lines. Did you exit to prompt us from the wings? There is a full house here, hungry for love, starvingly Nirmal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nirmal.
Welcome.
So now I invite Mr. Sridharan, the former PA to the VC of Central University of Tamil Nadu, to share his thoughts on Professor Rajani. Mr. Sridharan. Hello, Mr. Sridharan. Hello, Mr. Sridharan, are you there?
Hello. Am I audible now?
Yes, Mr. Sridharan.
Yeah, I think there is no video, but if it is possible, is it fine? Otherwise, also doesn't matter. I can
That's
put it on my.
perfectly fine, sir. That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Please continue,
Thank you
sir.
very much, and good evening to all. And especially, I should recall Dr. Sanjay and Dr. Nirmal Selvamani. Mr. Sridhar was the then registrar, and those who are here from CUTN, Dr. Madhurima, who had been kind enough in including me to this very, luminaries, the academic luminaries are here. I am too small a person to talk.
I think we lost the audio.
Hello, Mr. Sridharan. Mr. Sridharan,
Yeah,
we cannot hear you.
Yeah. Now, am I audible now? I think there is a problem.
Yes, sir. You may continue.
Yeah.
You may continue.
So
Yes.
at the initial stage, as I said, the Tiruvarur is a very, very remote place where it will be very difficult for us to get into kind of activities like any city or town, big town. So, but that was the stage when Dr. Sanjay was handed over the charge of establishing a university, which is a very greatest task that anyone can do it. Of course, in that point of time, initially, as I said, there were only 8 students in the MA English, and that was down. And it was so divinely happened that the entire building was as if it has been made for us to be handed over at the university. It had a beautiful ambience, like made in fast food service for us. There were more than 70 to 80 rooms, and there were so many amenities available, which was made in the interest of the university to be run in a very professional way. And Dr. Sanjay has been very, he planned it so well in consultation with all the local, and we could get all the people locally bound by that. And that was the time when Dr. Nirmal Selvamani, Dr. Jayaraman, Dr. Rajani, who made this entire university as 3 pillars, who stood for us. And then that was the 8 students, which though the number might be very little, but that was the greatest spirit of Dr. Rajani, I should say. He was a bachelor and he was around more than 72, 73 years old at that time. So young and energetic when I looked at him for the first time, because normally the secretary's room used to be the place where all people, though the limited people were there, that was the source of place for meeting us. And then Professor Rajani was introduced to me. When I came into my cabin, I stood up and said, the intellectual look of that gentleman, I can't forget. I should remember Rabindranath Tagore, or I should say a very highly learned intellectual, simple dress, nothing, no quite a great show of anything. And he came and sat before me in a chair. Those time, the chair also was not so well, but he said, doesn't matter, Sridharan, I can sit. Then we introduced ourselves. The amount of love that he was talking to me, and then the amount of love he showered on all the new students there, it was wonderful. That is the only thing. And in future, when the days rolled on, I came to know about his greatest talent of creating theaters for the people. I think that is the best bridge that he has pulled together to put together all the people together. That is the greatest effort that he made. And I had very high regards for him. And every time he used to ask me, like, where can I get South Indian meal? And I used to say, we will get it, sir, you don't worry. So that was more of affection towards my teachers. I should say, I give a lot of respect to the academicians, even from the lowest level of my life. And I was in Reserve Bank for quite a number of years. Then we used to speak in Hindi. And then he said, don't talk to me in Hindi. Try to put me on a very nice Tamil, which I want to learn from you. I said, you are the professor, I am a student. He said, in this way, you are the professor, I am the student. You teach me. I think Dr. Nirmal Selvamani would also recollect that we were all together in one or the other occasion. And the entire, the academic sessions were completely changed into a lively one. The moment Dr. Rajani enters into the class, he used to sit on the chair, he used to sit on the table and teach the students. That was the kindness. And all the classes used to be laughter. All the classes used to be so much cherished of his loveliness and then love. And he used to be very friendly. And I heard at times he used to pay the fees of the poor students. And such a great personality, he is no more with us. But because of the qualities that he possessed, he will ever remain with us. And Dr. Rajani, CUTN will never forget you. The academics world will never forget you. The students will never forget you. I think this is a never-ending journey for you, and there is no end for you. This is the beginning of an end for you. And thank you, Madhurima, for giving me an opportunity to be in the midst of great people here. And I always cherish, and I am still in Tiruvarur. And whenever I'm in Tiruvarur, anybody can come and approach me, whatever I can do for you. And I used to remember the entire university at the beginning stage. And thanks for each and everyone here, those who know me very well. And I'm very grateful to all of you. And thank you very much, Madhurima, for your opportunity. Thank you. And thank you and all.
Thank you so much, Sridharan sir. I'm very glad you shared all those experiences. I'm really sure everyone would have enjoyed each one of those. Next, we will be presenting a small excerpt from Dying is an Art, the play written by our very own Rajani sir. It has been recorded and put together from 4 different parts of the world, presenting Daddy by Sylvia Plath.
I hope it is visible to everybody.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
The audio is not there.
No audio. They just no audio. Tejas, there is no audio.
I'm trying to get it through.
Yeah, just why don't you stop your video? If you're using headphones, it wouldn't work.
I never could talk to you. The
Yeah.
tongues.
Can you restart? It's audible now. Can you restart?
Yes.
Wires.
Thank you.
Sorry for the technical glitch. Start again.
Daddy, you did not do any more black shoe, in which I've lived like foot for 30 years. Poor and white, barely daring to speak or chew. Daddy, I had to kill you.
You died before I had time, marble heavy, with a bag full of God, ghastly statue with one grey toe, big as a Briscoe seal, and a head in the freakish Atlantic, where it pours beam green over blue in the waters of beautiful Nauset.
I used to pray to recover you. Ark, do, in the German tongue, in the Polish town, scraped flat by the rollers of wars, wars, wars. The name of the town is common. My Polish friend says there are a dozen or two. So I never could tell where you put your foot, your root. I never could talk to you. The tongue stuck in my jaw. It's stuck in a barbed wire snare. Ick, 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 ick. I could hardly speak.
I thought every German was you.
And the language obscene. An engine chuffing me off like a Jew to Dachau, Auschwitz, Belsen. I began to talk like a Jew. I think I may well be a Jew.
The snows of Tyrol, the clear beer of Vienna are not very pure or true with my gypsy ancestors and my weird luck.
And my tarot pack. I have always been scared of you with your Luftwaffe and your gobbledygook.
And your neat mustache.
And your Aryan eye, bright blue.
Handsome man. Oh, you.
Not God, but a swastika. So black no sky could squeak through. Every woman adores a fascist. The boot in the face, the brute heart of a brute like you.
You stand at the blackboard, Daddy. In the picture I have of you, a cleft in your chin instead of your foot.
But no less a devil for that. No, not any less a black man who bit my pretty red garden too. I was 10 when they buried you. At 20, I had to die and get back to you. I thought even the bones would do. They pulled me out of the sack and they stuck me together with glue. And then I knew what to do.
I made a model of you, a man in black with the main comb look and the love of the rack and the screw.
And I said, I do. So Daddy, I'm finally through. Daddy, you can lie back now.
There is a stake in your fat black heart.
And the villagers never liked you. They're dancing and stamping on you.
They always knew it was you.
Daddy, you bastard! I'm through.
Am I audible, Tejas?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Now I invite one of the prominent theatre persons who have shared the same amount of passion as Professor Rajani had for theatres. It's our pleasure that we have Mange ma'am with us to moderate the panel discussion. Please take over the platform, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. We can start.
Yeah. I request the other panelists to switch on their videos. We can switch on the audio once you come in. Thank you so much. As we all know, the only way to deal with grief is to share our emotions, thoughts, and experiences of the departed soul of Professor Rajani. The times are cruel. They demand that we learn newer ways of grieving. Death, funeral rituals, being there with the loved ones, all of these are treasured cultural aspects all over the world across times past and present. Thanks for initiating this memorial meet online and also sharing it live for many more viewers. Wherever Rajani has been, there has always been warmth, joy, an amazing sense of empathy, and high quality immersive literary and artistic experience. And that is very much in keeping with the theatrical form. Theatre insists on letting go, helps us stretch our own selves to accommodate and embrace unlikely companions. And a theatre practiced by a teacher turned director, comes with much more nuances. What I want to share with you is the reflections of a person who has seen Professor Rajani from the wings, so to speak. As a theatre practitioner and a teacher myself, our ways have crossed many times for over 30 years, have also parted ways very often. I worked with overtly socio-political agenda in Tamil. For Rajani, theatre was about the poetic, the creative, the intensely immersive experience that changes one from within. I wish to share the way he opened doors to participants, and in this case, students. The themes, texts from diverse contexts, in an otherwise rigid formulaic structures within institutionalized academia. And he managed to do this with sheer insistence uncompromisingly. As a result, though the structures did not yield in the formal sense, the participants were aware of surviving, resisting, and coping with the structures. And these structures meant educational, fixed yardsticks of merit, standard notions of learning, as well as personal spheres of body image, confidence about proficiency in English, which unfortunately is often treated as a mark of knowledge and scholarship in our still neo-colonialized system of education, and ownership of decision-making. Theatre, by its very nature, is collaborative. It is also explorative. While there are umpteen theories about actors' training and directorial processes, the fact of theatre insisting on democratic modes of functioning cannot be ruled out at any cost. Augusto Boal defined theatre of the oppressed as a rehearsal for revolution. The potential of theatre to make spectators into spectators and the actors into facilitators became crucial. Theatre makes the participants frame themselves in a context, shape into a character, script the transitions that are generated by the text and the subtext, and perform them with ownership. I've seen students year after year transforming on stage and reality after their work with Rajani. I have observed how they have become acutely aware of injustices, especially about taboo subjects like sexual violence. And many have drenched themselves in reflecting upon relationships that most of us take for granted, including that between the mother and the daughter. but unanimously all of them have gained their subject positions, confidence and understanding of their personhood, even in the most difficult, asymmetrical, unjust world around. I can totally understand as a fellow theatre worker what it would have extracted from Professor Rajani to see them reach there. An our-topia, an imagination of a world that works for all or for as many as possible. It is a catalytic possibility of weaving lived experiences, imagination, human potential, and creative capacity to reshape shared futures. Professor Rajani was open to the changing contours of English studies. He was at the forefront of introducing newer texts while retaining his passion for the classics. South African plays and poems in the 80s must have been unheard of. In the 90s, with higher education facing a rough financial crisis, almost as what is being unleashed today, English studies opened newer frontiers. At the University of Madras, it was the introduction of Australian and Canadian literatures, of which Dr. Indra spoke about. And Rajani rose up to the occasion. Nagaradhika and Sumati Tangapandian went on to work on Australian drama, thanks to Rajani's inspiration, duly supported by Dr. Indra and Dr. Nirmala. With the rising consciousness about Ambedkarite movements, when the Department of English, University of Madras, staged K.A. Gunashekaran's Baliyadagal and Waiting for a Visa, based on Ambedkar's autobiographical notes in Tamil, put together by Palani and Alagarasan, Professor Rajani turned to fresh possibilities as well. His work at the Central University of Tiruvallur must have thrown more challenges in terms of its heterogeneity and remoteness. But Professor Rajani created a space for theatre festival and competitions. Stella Maris College has willingly participated in them. How can one ever say no to Rajani? And Miss Lata, my friend and colleague at Stella Maris, a student of Professor Rajani and Dr. Ganesh, willingly took up that responsibility. The sheer fact that so many names and anecdotes spring to your mind at the mention of Professor Rajani is testimony to the way he touched people. He was truly a mentor who held your hand till it was necessary and enjoyed the leaps you were making in life. For him, education was about human development, which in turn can redefine paradigms at work and ignite positive changes. And within that larger ambit, his pedagogy and expertise were achieved through theatre. Not for Rajani, the ornamentations of mounting a production, or playing to the gallery, or getting into the annals of history of theatre. It was a process of making theatre that nudged him forward all the time. His positive energy was infectious, and we all crave that at all times. The panelists who are here with us today have much more insider experience of working with Rajani. I, in turn, have had the pleasure of working in different capacities with all the panelists, much more closely with V. Geeta. We have worked on 5 plays and many readings together, and I've had the joy of directing her plays. Dr. Ganesh was a student, colleague, and friend of Rajani from the time when Rajani and Dr. Vishnubat held court on studies of Western and Indian aesthetic. Dr. May Joseph, an environmental theatre artist who teaches at Pratt Institute, New York, carried forward the legacy of Professor Rajani, or Sir, as she still refers to him. And the last panelist is Dr. David Wesley, who inherited all the lore of Professor Rajani and his followers, being the darling Kadakutti of Rajani's tribe. I'm sure each of them will enrich our understanding of the elusive but very present charisma of Professor Rajani. Professor Rajani, we celebrate your life well lived, uncompromisingly, on your terms, all the time. The footprints you have left behind will certainly become our guiding milestones. Can't thank you enough, and words fail. But as a theatre person, I'm sure you get it. Thank you all. May I invite Dr. Ganesh to continue the discussion on this panel. And thank you all so much for the Friends of CUTN Thiruvarur for having arranged and brought us all together this day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mangai. You able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mangai, for the short account of Dr. Rajani's life. And I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak about my teacher and mentor and a lifelong friend, Dr. Rajani, whom we happily call Gadi Karare, an expression that he obviously liked. I came to Madras Christian College in 1982, and my association with Dr. Rajani is about 37 years, because I met him last in 2019 in Madras Christian College. Now, when I came from Loyola, after having done my undergraduate program, and almost having believed in the sanctity of British and American literatures alone, it was Rajani who introduced me to a wide variety of literatures, right? European drama, African theatre, South African theatre, and a number of plays that he asked us to read. Now that, in one sense, helped us develop. Now, people spoke about the transformative power of Rajani. As a student, and I always remained a student, as a student, let's say, he had enabled me to look at life and literature quite distinctly. His library was an open one, open access library, as it were. One can open his cupboards and take books, but return them, obviously, intact. I remember the first book that I borrowed from Dr. Rajani was The Theatre of the Absurd by Martin Esslin, because he was teaching his birthday party. And that was in 1983. And since then, I've been a regular visitor, let's say, in his room, taking rest, reading books, discussing with Sir. He's an amazing teacher. And he taught us John Donne, E. Cummings, Sylvia Plath, Wallace Stevens, and Sexton with regard to poetry. Busy old fool, unruly son resonates in my ear even today. And when he spoke about characters in drama, such as Jimmy Potter or Meg or Goldberg or Stanley Kowalski or, say, Blanche Dubois, we took them as amazing insights into those characters. They appear to be casual expressions in the class, but we used to take them. We used to take them down and then use them. And one of the important plays, say that really impacted me, particularly when he taught Streetcar Named Desire, Chitra and I, my classmate and friend, we were so moved, we were so touched by the tragedy of Blanche that we traveled in train back from Tambaram to Mambalam without uttering a word. Though an unworthy successor to Sir, later on in my career in Madras Christian College, I got the opportunity to teach all these poets when I taught American literature. I did that with a semblance of confidence only because I remembered his amazing insights into those poets. Like Dr. Mangai mentioned, he was quite alive to all the, say, forces of discrimination and discourses of discrimination. So when I accompanied him on his customary walks, Rajani made me aware of many discriminatory discourses that were prevalent in Indian society and those that were prevalent in Western texts as solid constructs. And obviously, he played no mean role in shaping my sensitivities, shaping my sensibilities. Now, when I told him that I'm going to work on metadrama, both in the Eastern and Western context, he still insisted that I should work on theatres that dealt with discrimination and, let's say, the theatres that perpetrated. I couldn't obviously keep to his wish. Now, Dr. Rajani immensely contributed to the department when he edited books along with Dr. Rajagopalan, Dr. Nirmal Selvamani, all of them are my teachers. Who Says My Hand, A Needle Better Fits, an anthology of American women's writing, which was done in collaboration with the Center for Women's Studies in 1999. I joined the department in 85, so I've had long association with Sir. And then Living and Feeling, an anthology of Indian women's writing, again, Department of English and Center for Women's Studies, Madras Christian College, 1999, edited by Rajani Sir, Rajagopalan Sir, and Nirmal Selvamani Sir. Now, what is important here is, let's say, he gave each of the faculty members an opportunity to analyze the text and write, let's say, in that anthology of his. And I can say with humility and a happy pride that it was my first article to be printed. And he gave us that confidence, he gave us that kind of energy, let's say, to carry on with this particular work. Women's writings and women's studies became a part of the academic consciousness in MCC only because of Dr. Rajani. Now, if his students like me could think outside the narrowly confined frame of the university syllabus, then it is because of Rajani sir, who took personal interest in our development, not only intellectually, but also emotionally. Changing Face of the Coastal Zone between Chennai and Mamlapuram is another book that he edited along with Dr. Nirmal Selvamani, Bhagavan Das, and Dayanandan. And The Poetry of Sylvia Plath, published by Orient Blank Swan, which is his own thesis. Let's say his thesis became a book. And Poetry of Sylvia Plath was, say, published by Orient Longman in the year 2000. And I can again say with a very happy pride that we, Geeta, again a lifelong friend, and I had the opportunity to go through the manuscripts of his thesis, because we used to, say, bring them home and look at them and kind of a proofreading exercise. But we enjoyed every bit of his thesis, let's say, in person, because we had his handwritten, say, manuscripts with us. And I consider that to be one of the greatest opportunities that I've had in life. Now, my interest in drama and theatre was augmented by Rajani sir's abiding passion for both. And he made me read every play text that he produced, telling me that I can have a nuanced understanding of the play only when I read the play and watched the performance. And Rajani sir founded and edited the literary journal, English Research Journal. I thank Dr. Rajagopalan for mentioning that in his tribute to Dr. Rajani. And another facet of Dr. Rajani's personality is, let's say, he had a penchant for Western music. He was a very keen student of Western music and Western art. And when I told him that I also occasionally listen to Western music, he not only gave audio CDs, let's say, to me, and gave me books on Western music, which critically analyzed not only Western music, but also individual composers. And he made me Xerox that book and keep it, let's say, I still have it with me as a token of his remembrance. And personally speaking, I have a few anecdotes that I should share. One is, let's say, he's the most generous of human beings I've ever come across. When he sees anybody, and I have been one of his beneficiaries, when he sees anybody, let's say, in a financial crisis, he won't even ask you. He would volunteer to give any sum of money instantly. Right? So I kept his passbook, let's say, for such a long time that he didn't even remember that the passbook is with me. That kind of a person is Rajani. And when you fall sick, he will be the first one to visit you home. And I have a personal anecdote to share, which is a very emotional moment in my life. I was down with cervical spondylosis, and I obviously had a plaster of Paris cast from my neck to my shoulder, and I could not lie down on a bed. Suddenly, Rajani arrives at my place, and then he brings his easy chair and a comfortable bedding, telling me that for 21 days I can at least catch some sleep sitting in that particular position. I don't think anybody, any teacher, let's say, would think like that. I don't know even who told him that I am in a plaster of Paris cast. How he brought it, that all that is still a mystery to me. And when it comes to another personal anecdote, since Dr. Mangai mentioned Dr. Bhatt and Rajani, very interestingly, let's say they were amazing colleagues, but they were believed to be in the opposite camps. So like to talk about Eastern theatre and Western theatre, but not only that, they had excellent academic quarrels, right? Which were say, vociferous outbursts, right? Terrific fights in the department. I remember one day, Dr. Rajani and Dr. Bhatt had a fight, and Dr. Bhatt left the room, let's say, very angrily. And I thought, let's say, and Dr. Rajani and Bhatt can never meet again, can never speak to each other again. Then I went to Dr. Vishnu Bhatt's house around 7 o'clock. Dr. Rajani comes to Vishnu Bhatt's house asking for a cup of tea as though nothing had happened in the afternoon. Now, that is Dr. Rajani, and it was in the month of December, and Dr. Rajani had a ear problem. The winter always caused a problem. The same week, let's say 2 days after the fight, when I was in Vishnu Bhatt's house and I was informed that we were informed that Rajani is suffering from ear pain, Vishnu Bhatt even forgot to wear his shirt. He just rushed to Rajani's room. Now, that was the bond, let's say, that I saw between two great teachers, let's say both of them my well-wishers and my mentors. Now, for Rajani, staging plays is a kind of a tapas, right? It's an austere spiritual practice, a process to reach special observation and, say, insights into the play. And Dr. Nirmal Sanmani mentioned about his call of mountains. And for me, let's say, it's our Arne Names. Let's say, who went to the mountains, not because he had any religious beliefs in Shiva, but his visits to the mountains almost provided him with the deep ecological consciousness. I think Dr. Indra also mentioned the word egalitarian, right? That egalitarianism is because of his, say, infinite contact with nature. His infinite contact with nature. Needless to say that we will miss him. Nature doesn't create the likes of Rajani quite often. So we have to wait for a very, 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 very long time to see a person like Rajani. He was a very unique person, and the word legend indubitably can be obviously be used to describe him. Sir, I miss you personally because you have been an amazing friend to me. You have been an amazing friend to my family, and I can only feel proud and happy that I could have a long, cherished relationship with you for 37 long years. May your soul rest in peace. Thank you, Mangai.
Thank you, Ganesh. That was an extremely moving tribute to someone we all loved very, very dearly. I actually want to start with thinking of a poem that I think Rajani made us all read. May Joseph is here. She might well remember that. This is Gerard Manley Hopkins' Margaret, Are You Grieving? And I remember Rajani telling us, this poem is really not about the person who suffered a loss. It's actually about those who have to deal with loss. So Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove and grieving? And the poem ends with the line, it's Margaret you grieve for, it's actually you that you grieve for. So I think a death like this, a passing on like this, leaves each one of us diminished in some ways. And you realize that one precious part of yourself is also sort of afloat in the air along with whoever is passed on. And I think memorial meetings like these help us reconnect with the lost part of ourselves, those that pass on, take away with them in some ways. I sort of took a sneak peek at whoever is present at this meeting, and I was very glad and moved to see so many people from Madras Christian College. Altaf is here, a very, very dear soul and a friend of Rajani's. There's Cherian Kurian, who used to live in Salur Hall, and we often ran into him every morning before we started class. And there are many, many others who are here. And for me, thinking of Rajani in the context of Madras Christian College brings to mind an entire way of teaching and living and learning that I think has left an indelible mark on all our lives. It was a fantastic time to be in MCC in the mid-1980s. It was a time sandwiched between the earlier sort of radical phase of MCC when the SFI was very active on campus and it was understood to be a very radical red kind of campus. And what came after us belonged to an era when education was sort of getting into the neoliberal mode and campus life was being very, very quickly transformed. And I think many of us here would remember that transformation in terms of the number of trees that were cut to make way for a former prime minister to come and deliver a valedictory address. But we were very lucky, Ganesh, I and May and a few others, because we were part of that charmed time between two very sharp moments in the campus's history. And Rajani for me symbolized the most creative aspects of that teaching culture that was there during the period we were there. And what was that teaching culture? Basically, I think we came into English literature before English literature became completely captive to the sort of post-colonial theorizing that you witnessed from the late 1980s onwards, where you could never again read an English poem or an English text without suffering a qualm of guilt. That you know that you're participating and you're being complicit with a colonial sort of inheritance, a colonial tradition, and you felt extremely sort of torn and tortured about taking this ahead. But I think for us, Rajani filled us with a love for the word. I still remember my first encounter with him, my first class. He just sort of handed over Allen Ginsberg's Howl and said, "Read it, child." You know, and I'd never read Ginsberg before. I'd come from Stella Maris, where everything was so prim and proper, where you sort of felt that 18th century literature was the most modern, you know, and Milton was a heretic. So to come into MCC and to be given Ginsberg and to read Howl sort of suddenly opened up an entire world of thinking about literature that I think many of us hadn't encountered until then. And as Ganesh pointed out, Rajani opened that world out to us in ever so many ways. His room on the first floor of Thomas Hall was a kind of sanctuary for many of us. If we'd had a bad day in college, we'd go and curl ourselves in a corner and sort of wait until Rajani took notice and said something soothing or just let us be, you know. Sometimes he would ask us to read something, or he would ask us to sit with another student and help that student through whatever he or she was going through. So it was a kind of space where whatever you heard in the classroom was carried forward into other spaces, you know, in the ditches. Many of us from MCC would remember the intense discussions we had in those ditches. Much of what we learned happened in the ditches and in Sam's tea shop rather than in the classrooms. And Rajani was a great one for sort of holding forth in Sam's tea shop. I think every generation of student would remember how a coterie of us would go with him and would get fed with tea and laddu and whatever, and continue our discussions on Sylvia Plath, on Allen Ginsberg, or on whatever else that we had been thinking of and arguing with him, you know. So there was a culture of breathing literature in a way that was pre-theoretical. And I think Rajani sort of inhabited that world with such marvelous ease and without that kind of post-colonial guilt tripping that many of us got into later on. And I think that's remained with many of us today. I think that has survived all the fancy theories that we picked up along the way, all the ways in which we learned to see English literature was an imposition. It colonized us. It sort of made us feel inferior to Europe. But Rajani made us feel that everything we read was actually being spoken to us. It had been written for us. Allen Ginsberg wrote for us, you know, and John Donne was not a 17th century poet. He was our contemporary. So I think he brought with him a certain performative energy, a certain way of inhabiting language that was so fascinating and opened up our imaginative universes in ways that are still with us. Today, when I feel sort of extremely dejected for various reasons, as many of us are during this time of the pandemic, or when we sort of think of the million horrors that we are being subject to across the world in the name of disease control, you know, and the ebbing away of love and generosity and democracy in this country, you suddenly sort of sit back and you let the memory of some of those wonderful poems that you heard, that you listened to, that you sort of took in, run through your mind, and you realize that words matter, you know, and words are the only ways in which you can connect with this world in a precise, meaningful, rich manner. And Rajani, I think, more than anyone else that I knew in my college days, filled me with a love for the word. And I was thinking of that amazing poem by Auden, written on the occasion of W.B. Yeats's death, where Auden, of course, says very wryly, as a poet who lived through the 1930s, as a poet who was part of the Spanish Civil War and then came back and regretted having been part of that moment. And of course, Auden has his immortal lines, poetry makes nothing happen. It remains in the value of its own making. It's a mouth, he says, you know, and I think it's that mouth that Rajani sort of opened up for us in different ways. And I think part of that was what also led him into theater, his love for the word, and in all the plays that he did when I was in college. And all of them were, of course, women-centered. And May is here. She's acted in almost all of them. Glass Menagerie, the rope dancers. I think someone else acted in rope dancers. And of course, Plath, Beljar. And those moments of preparing to act, of rehearsals, I sort of hung around because Rajani made me prompter for many of these shows, and also because all my favorite girlfriends were acting in those plays, and I had to be there. And I think it was very interesting because those of us who work with Rajani knows how intense he can get to be on the sets, and that intensity also made for moments of great creative, but also extremely distressing tension sometimes. And I sort of became the kind of go between the director and my favorite women on stage. And that was a role that was interesting. In retrospect, it's interesting. But at that time, I don't think it was particularly interesting. It was a difficult role to play because obviously Sir was fantastic. Sir was a director, and we had to listen to Sir. But we were also headstrong women, all of us. And we sort of had to deal with this extremely charismatic director on stage. So that experience was also something that taught me a lot about Rajani's strength as a director, as well as Rajani's very sort of single-minded devotion to theatre. Because on stage, nothing else mattered. You could be a great favorite student before you got onto stage. But on stage, you were a performer, and you'd better remember that. That was most important rather than anything else. So, so thinking back, I'd like to sort of remember Rajani as exemplifying a culture of learning, teaching, and communicating that sadly is on the retreat across the world, which was deep and personal, but it was not personal in that sticky, sentimental manner that you associate the word personal with. It was personal in that teachers like Rajani were invested in each one of us. They identified what was precious about each one of us, and they answered to our needs in an extremely caring, generous, and yet detached manner. They did not seek to make that investment in our lives the source of their power. That was not the case at all. And I remember two things, and I want to end with this. For many, many months, I think in my first year of college, because I had done particularly well in a certain seminar or whatever, Ajani said, I'm going to treat you by taking you to Moore Market every Saturday and buy you all the books that you need. For somebody who hardly had any pocket money or who had to sort of really live on very little that was given to you, this was like a world of treasures. And I remember how much of my library is really from Rajani's largesse, And I sort of stole 3 books from him when I saw him last. I'm very glad I stole those books because he has his name written on those books, and he was very particular about how those books should be kept. They were always covered very neatly in brown paper. And I'm glad to say I let him take away one of my favorite books, the great Jewish poet who perished at Auschwitz, Abraham Schutzkever. So I'm glad I bought that book for him because he requested it at some point. And I am very glad I was able to return some of that largesse. And the other moment of largesse was when I was applying to study in the United States, and I had to submit a paper. And of course, this is pre-digital India. You were lucky if you owned a typewriter. And he said, child, why do you want to go and give this out to be typed by someone in a type shop? You come early in the morning. Every day I will type 5 pages for you. And this kind of generosity, this sort of reaching out to a student is something that I've learned from him. And if today I enjoy being with young people and I get very excited by young people, it's really largely because I've seen teachers who were like that, to whom nothing mattered, not your age, whether you were from this or that background, but to manage to identify in you as a student that spark of life, of being that ought to be nurtured and fostered. And I think Rajani made possible a great flourishing. And thank you so much, sir. And I can still remember your words always. But of course, I'll call you child. Why are you wanting me to call you anything else? Because I would say, sir, I'm not a child anymore, but you are my child, he would say. So I'd like to sort of remember that warmth, that fostering, and the great flourishing that he's made possible. And if today some of us are where we are, particularly speaking for myself, I think I would not be where I am today if it had not been for my teachers. And Rajani certainly holds pride of place in that group of teachers I continue to respect and hold very dear to my heart. Thank you very much. And I ask May to come on next.
Thank you, Geeta. That was just so beautiful. And I'm just so honored. I just want to thank Monica, Geeta, Mangai, Madhurima. It's wonderful to be here, to have the opportunity to share and celebrate Rajani's life with my former teachers and Ganesh and all these people, all of you. I haven't seen you for so many years. And Rajani was always, you know, he was my great mentor, and I always think of him as the last great Bohemian, genuinely committed to a life for arts, of art for art's sake. And he always brought people together. And it seems to me, again, here we are gathered because of Rajani in a large virtual theater, which is very much his spirit working through us. Rajani was, for me, a great searing light and a beacon of creativity. He was probably the most eccentric person I've ever met, Spartan to a fault. He touched hundreds of us students with a love of theater and poetry. And Geeta really captured so many aspects of Rajani's deep pedagogy that was a living practice of immersing oneself in the poetic possibility of everyday life. Every moment in Tambaram was an opportunity for poetry, and through Rajani's work, but also through the work of other teachers who were there at that time. Robert Burns, G.K. Matthews, Joseph James. These people, along with Rajani, created for me an ethos that was truly inspiring and moving, and produced who I am today as someone deeply involved in the theater. When I think of Rajani, I think of his beautiful terrace, you know, with the white doves and the blue sky. And, you know, we used to recite poetry all the time, Geeta and a whole bunch of us. I recall voices reciting Ginsberg and Yeats and rehearsing all of the plays that produced so much vitality those years, so filled with intensity and camaraderie and conviviality. That was so much part of what Rajani generated on campus. And for me, Rajani, you know, I never met Rajani after I left in '85, but I always thought of Rajani through poets like Hopkins and Rainer Maria Rilke. And I always invoked Rajani when I read Sylvia Plath and Tagore's Chandalika, which was the first performance I did in Madras when I met him in 1980. And Rajani was just this incredible spirit who was very musical, as Ganesh pointed out. And for me, Rajani's room was a place where Shostakovich and Dvorak and Telemann filled the forests of Tambaram. And it was just so wonderful to go up those stairs. And poor Professor Selvaraj, who used to live below Rajani, who used to get really probably furious with all these teenagers going up all the time, you know, and we would be reciting loudly, you know, the Howl and, you know, Song of Myself or Whitman, and we would be just so passionate. And I never thought what an annoying group of people we were, because we were so excited about what we were doing. And, you know, I when I think of Rajani and I heard he passed away, I can't come to an image of Rajani passing away. I see him in his rubber chappals, walking the Himalayas, which I never believed he did. I just didn't see how anyone could walk in the Himalayas in rubber chappals, which is something impossible. I mean, I get cold in Madras. You know, how does someone walk in the Himalayas? And he, you know, I could see him just up there, you know, smiling at us, really thrilled that we've all come together to think about the power of the word and the role of ecstasy and passion in our lives. When Rajani was when I was a student of Rajani's, I I never called him by his name. I always called him sir. Sir was a noun. In the whole of college, he was the only one I called sir. He was, for me, the consummate teacher, irreverent mendicant, and the lyrical soul. I considered Sir's loft in Thomas Hall the abode. I always think of these white doves on his terrace, and it became a utopian space for me. And as both Ganesh and Geeta have pointed out, Rajani's room was a place of refuge. You know, in medieval Europe, there were these ideas, there were these open cities, these cities of refuge that Levinas talks about, that if you were a gypsy, or if you were Jewish, or if you were fleeing war, you could go to these cities and you'd find refuge. And for a lot of us, Rajani's apartment in Thomas Hall was a place of refuge. And it was a union place. It was a place for generations of us misfits, poets, actors, Marxists, writers. We all knew where Rajani kept his key. And for many of us, you know, we had absolutely no compunction if things were going really rough, that we'd take his key, open it, and go and sleep in his apartment. And, you know, it was really a kind of a collecting place of all sorts of waifs of many, many, many generations. So Rajani for me was more than a teacher. He was a buoy of calm and creative imagination with a very down-to-earth approach. You know, he fed me through many cyclones. I was in Madras 5 years, and, you know, he would always feed me bread, and he fed many, many people in his apartment. You know, he was always an open place where people who didn't have anywhere to go would show up at. And in that sense, Rajani was not just someone who was avant-garde and cutting edge and provocative, but he was always generous. He was very kind, and he was a teacher in the Socratic sense, because he believed that the care of the soul was an important human obligation. It is something, at least here in the United States, that we've sort of forgotten about. But what does that mean, the care of the soul, at a soulless time, you know? And Rajani, you know, he treated MCC as the agora. And for him to, you know, like learning how to think critically and how to learn to live in the world was something that one was always cultivating, one was always working through. And for me, this part of Rajani that Ganesh and Geeta pointed out, his library, was perhaps the most profound part of Rajani that remains with me, that he was a true internationalist. His bookshelves were lined with poetry from around the world. He introduced me to Osip Mandelstam and Mayakovsky and Akhmatova and Pablo Neruda and Aimé Césaire and the Eastern European poets. And they were all wrapped in brown paper, as Geeta reminded me, every one of his books so lovingly covered. And you know, Rajani was an Anglophile. He loved British theatre, the angry young men, and he loved he loved Tennessee Williams, which now I realize I don't like at all. I was a big fan of Williams when, you know, I was an undergraduate, but when I understood Southern white culture, I now understand better a different sense of who Blanche du Bois is. And I always loved my rendering of Blanche du Bois through Rajani's eyes, because that was a much more compassionate and much more likable Du Bois. I don't think the Du Bois that Williams is raising in the context of the South would have been one I would have been able to represent or embody at another point in time. So for me, Rajani's theatre was a place where the idea for poor theatre begins to develop. That he introduced me to Grotowski and Meyerhold and Paulo Freire. And Rajani really believed in Dylan Thomas's dictum, you know, art for art's sake. He was a very engaged teacher that immersed himself in people's lives. And this was a very profound and moving pedagogy to watch so up close that teachers at MCC did. But he was particularly elaborate and all-consuming in his practice. So, you know, one thing Geeta just mentioned, how generous he was in helping us write those early applications to move forward. Rajani taught me how to write. And he also taught me how to produce powerful theatrical experiences. I carry Rajani's spirit in my writing and my theater work, and always push the boundaries of the possible, and always keep sight of the lived and the embodied through the passion for poetry. And thank you so much for giving this opportunity to hear all of you, because it's so profound what Rajani offered all of us. But what that moment, as Geeta said, that moment of the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, the moment in the world when things were possible that have closed at this point, that moment is hard to process. And thank you all of you for giving me a language to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. May Joseph, for that very, very powerful and emotional look into first life, especially those years of the 80s, 90s, where I was only a toddler then. I was a student in 2007 to 10, those 3 years, and these are the stories of May Joseph, stories of Geeta, stories of Ganesh I've heard over the years from him. So like how Mange ma'am began, I am the lucky and most fortunate inheritant, person who inherited all the stories of the great names that I hear all the time. And just to be part of this panel of great array of people, stars in their own rights, is I don't feel myself, I don't consider myself anywhere close to being worthy of being part of this panel, except for the fact that I met him. I prepared a lot. I don't know if I'm going to go through all of them now. Maybe I'll just read what I prepared. He always told us that we do theater not to entertain, but to disturb. That phrase remained with me always. He never looked at it merely as something that people would come and enjoy and leave, but he wanted them to be, he wanted them to carry the drama with them. And he was more towards tragedy and serious drama than comic drama, because he kept saying that you put so much effort into drama, or into comedy particularly, but people might forget it. But with tragedy, they always recall, always remember. The impact is of a strong kind. So so that is where I thought I'll begin, because with Rajani sir, it was for us, for most of the students in the 80s and 90s, he was as they told us recently, when we all had the opportunity to get together on a WhatsApp group and talk about sir, they all said that he was fondly referred to as Pa. And for us in the University of Madras, when he was teaching after his retirement, he was Tata, and truly the figure, the older figure in the university. Even the teachers would say the same thing. They would say Tata Vangadara, Tata class Kara. The reference would be only Tata, and we all know who Tata was, and that was him. So his relation with each one of us was at such a personal level that it is extremely hard to look at his work and his life very objectively. His life and his work cannot be separated. They're one and the same. And then we see that he worked on a play as if his life depended on it. And we thought, how is he ever going to get out of this play? But at the end of that final performance, he would just walk away from the performance, from the play itself, from the characters, from the scenes, from the entire drama of it, as if it mattered nothing to him. It was something awe-inspiring to young people like us when we saw him. He was already in his late 60s when we met him, and we were in the early 20s, and I could see there was nothing we could question him about. It was all watching him with jaws dropped and with our bulging eyes, and we look at him and we just internalize whatever he spoke or did. Everything was something that we wanted to know as we wanted to scrape out the last amount of knowledge that was in the last bit of it from him. So when you meet the man, the first thing that we all notice is that piercing look he would give us in the classroom, in the corridor when he looks at you. We have all talked about his eyes, that piercing look, that mischief in the eyes, the twinkle in the eye. We know that. Most of us who have had any contact with him would know that kind of a look. I think that look, I want to probably pay attention to that look in a metaphoric way as well. I think it was that piercing look that he had into a text as well. The way he went inside a text was almost as if he was piercing through it, and he tried to crack open a poem. That's the phrase I took from him. He used to say, it would thrill me to crack open a poem. He enjoyed the thrill of cracking open a poem. And he saw every time a piece of poem, a piece of poetry, he saw as a riddle that really challenged him, and he enjoyed that challenge. I think it is from that challenge of cracking open or decoding the language that really flowered into his theater. That's how I would want to look at it from a hugely retrospective manner. So it meant something for me, that look, as I was with him during at least in the penultimate lap of his life as a teacher, as a director, and as a man. He had this, as Indra ma'am had written in that article in the Hindu, that he had a living relationship with the classroom and his students. The living relationship, I think, was also with the texts that he read and the characters that he made them come alive. And I remember every time he told me, take the drama out of the text, or he used the word lift the drama out of the text. The way he would place his hand this way, and then he would say lift. And it was almost as if you could see the drama being lifted out of the text. I think that love for the English language, that love for words, as Neeta ma'am was talking, that really got to us as something that we also wanted to do. We could see that in the way he trained us. In fact, the first 15 days or even 20 days, even sometimes if we had the luxury of time, even for a month, we would be only reading the text again and again in the way he wanted it, with the ample pauses, with the way the intonation, the drama, and everything. Sitting down, read the entire script again and again. The number of times we read it, he would keep telling us, make the lines yours, make them yours, think the lines. And that is the phrase that kept coming into my head all these years, to think your lines. What does it mean to think the lines? It never got into me. In fact, the very first play I did with him, I had only 4 lines. And believe me, for those 4 lines, he took all the effort that was possible for the 3 months to get it the way he wanted it to get. That's because he wanted me to think those lines. It took me 2-3 plays to realize what he wanted actually. What does he mean by thinking the lines? And I realized that he found that there was a rhythm to the English language. He would put down his head sometimes, and we would be saying our lines, and at some point he would stop us and say, repeat it, because he found that the rhythm of the language is missing. So he found drama in the rhythm of the language, of the English language. And so every time, that is why I think the close relation between his poetry and his drama is of this, because I think the English language and the rhythm of the English language, and through all the process, what he ended up doing as inadvertently ended up doing was he naturalized the language in us. I think that is we were not native speakers of the language. Neither was he. But I think for Rajani sir, it was English was not at all a foreign language. He took to it like fish to water. In fact, I think this phrase is from him as well. So he helped us naturalize the language in such a way that by naturalizing the language, the mood, the moment, the drama of that line, everything came out through that rhythm and through that naturalization of the language. I think this is his way of looking into a text with such deeper, piercing way of looking at it. That was one level I thought his look, his piercing look can be seen. But I also think there's also another side to it. The way he looked into the lives of the students, I think that is also for me came at a personal level, and also as I've seen him work with personally with other people, other students. I've seen how he had taken immense care in trying to help out any students struggling with so many difficult things. Not only financially, not only so many other things, even mental issues. He would make sure that he would talk to you. Because he would tell me, I remember that, when you all come to do theater, when you all try to get into another character, I can see your personality being coming out, because I ask you not to do it the way some other actor did, or some whatever you see in films or anywhere else, but to get it out of you. So he used to keep telling us that get the character out of you. So the moment we get it out of us, what happens is invariably our personalities are out in the open, and he's able to see it. All our vulnerabilities, he's able to see it even before we see it. Even as young people, we don't sense what we are going through. He would sense it. He would take us aside, and then he would mentor us. He would tell us, do this, do that, and things like that. I remember, I think I have to share this. I was going through a really bad patch, and then he took me aside. I don't know what he thought about me at that time, but he told me this. I have never gotten this advice from anybody before or after. This advice was, child, if you want to withdraw, please do withdraw. There's nothing wrong in withdrawing. It's all right. I didn't understand it then, but it's something that was very soothing, because later on I realized that if you're going through a difficult time, you accept being that, to accept difficult times. And so he would say, I would do that myself. So these kinds of things, really, these are the words and the lines that he spoke to me over the years that kept coming back to me, all these instances. There's also another instance I want to share. As an MA student, most of us aren't sure as to what to do in life, what kind of career. I was not sure if I was going to be a good enough teacher or anything, anybody good enough. I was just kicked out of a campus interview because I had failed in 10th standard some years ago. They had some policy. I was a little crestfallen, and there was a refresher course somewhere. We had to do a little performance for the teachers who came for the refresher course. And while the lecture was being given, I seem to have asked a question to the guest speaker, and that seemed to impress him. I don't know, but he walked up to me, Rajani sir walked up to me and he said, become a teacher, da. Become a teacher, da, he told me. I was thinking, I was staring at him, what is he trying to tell me? And then in his own inimical way, he leant into me and he said this one sentence. He told me, a generation of students will be benefited. This is the same sentence. I remember that. I didn't know what he meant by that at that time. What did he mean by a generation of students will be benefited? Because I wasn't sure of what I was going to do. But he looked through somebody and he looked at a visionary there. He looked at something far beyond what I or anybody at that time could have thought of. So there is a clear reason why I wanted to become a reason, if at all there were so many doubts. Because of that one sentence, I knew what I wanted to do in life. And so in those ways, I'm sure I'm not the only one who benefited of that kind of advice from him over the years. And I think he was primarily doing theater as a teacher and not as an academician or a scholar. He hardly spoke to us. Now, I think when Dr. May Joseph is talking about Tolstoy and other things that he himself had been talking about, I'm really surprised because he never spoke to us about those things. He always spoke to us about life in general, and he was more of a teacher than in terms of doing theater. His perspective of doing that was as a teacher, and there was so many things to learn from him to be what kind of a teacher you have to be. And finally, I want to say one thing that I've been with him for 3-4 years, and then after that, constantly met him now and then. I don't know if most of other students or other people who did theater with him would say the same thing. He never said good. He never said well done. He never appreciated in front of me or in front of. I've seen him appreciate others to me, but I don't know. But I was this primary school kid kind of a person who just get a very good from a teacher and then you'd be satisfied. Perhaps he knew that. Perhaps he knew that I would stop doing theater, because I keep telling my close friends, saying the day Rajani tells me I am good or what I did was good or well done, I'm stopping theater. I don't want it, because that's just the kind of teacher. The only person I want to impress is him, because he was that teacher for me, and he never gave that word. I mean, gave himself that opportunity so that I would stop doing theater, perhaps. So these are some of the things I thought. Finally, I would. This is a book of notes that I had of his classes. I still have them. I'm sure many of you would also have. I would just read one line from a poem that he taught us, and then the explanation he had given us, which I had written down. I think that would, in one way, take us back to those days as well. This is Elizabeth Barrett Brown's sonnets from Portuguese, the sonnet 10. I'm just going to read the first line. Yet love, mere love, is beautiful indeed and worthy of acceptation. And then he would go on explaining that, and he would say, this is a reversal of tradition in the opening line itself. Mere love itself is worthy of acceptation, unlike the coaxing and cajoling of the male sonneteers. So he was trying to compare the sonneteers like that. And then this one sentence, finally, however inferior I am to you, this is Barrett Browning saying, however inferior I am to you, the moment I declare my love for you, I transfigure into being worthy of acceptation. This transfiguration does not come from external factors, but from the fact that I am in love with you. This is his words, his explanation of Barrett Browning's emotion. We could see the way he would become Barrett Browning himself, and the fact that he believed in love, the fact that he believed that love would just make sure that there is no high and low, no hierarchy in love, and all are same, just like we just listened to the poignant poem written by Nirmal sir, and how it took us to that side of Rajani sir. What he must have believed in love so much, and it is that love that is keeping me here at this moment, and all of us here joined together to celebrate his life. Thank you all so much for being so kind and patient. Thank you, Monday ma'am. Thank you, Madhurima, the rest of the panel, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David, and all the other panelists. I think finally, all of us, all the people who spoke, including the ones who recalled Rajani, are actually telling us that the transformation is about knowing and accepting and being unafraid of vulnerability. And when you accept that and is ready to really interact, take and give whatever you can, I think that is where the real transformation happens. So it's not about one person transforming the other. I think it's always a two-way process, and it's mutual and is enriching for life, all your life through. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I thank Madhurima and the friends of CUTN for having thought of this event. Thank you, panelists.
I thank Professor Mangai for leading this panel discussion. As a student of theatre trained under Professor Rajani, I think I could very well resonate with the thoughts that you had shared. And I thank the speakers, the other speakers in the panel also for the same. Now I invite Monica to share her thoughts. Monica?
Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. You are.
So many have spoken about Sir's academic brilliance, and I'm not going to harp upon that again, but talk about Sir outside academics. Sir said that it was the love of books that brought us together. That was 13 years ago in 2007. Since then, we became friends, thick as thieves, partners in crime, from reading a book every weekend to scaling the Himalayas together, with all kinds of crazy stories in between. He came home to Maram, Manipur, twice and was loved by everyone. He kept his flat in Chennai so that my siblings and I could use it and continue to pay rent, even though he no longer needed it. Until we were all done with Chennai. Sir wasn't just a fair weather friend, but a seasoned man who faced my storms like a father would. With the messy affairs of life, work, and problems, he was a place where they all crop up well. He always looked a riff-raff, not because he didn't own any expensive or nice clothes, but because he gave them off to anyone who needed them more than him. I once weaved him a bag and he gave it to a junior. And to be frank, I was beside myself. He asked if I could weave him another, and I did. And I told him not to give it away this time. Kandipa child, he said, and gave it off to a mutual friend. Sir was a great giver. And so much for his messy attire, he had a tailor-made heart for comfort, support, and care. Sir was wicked with words, and hilarious one-liner would slip off his tongue frequently. He scaled and frisked every word he uttered, pulled its weight, and hardly cared about the manners of the polite and sophisticated society. He scolded me into learning Tamil. He was never concerned about being politically right or wrong, and was always guided by sheer empathy and pulled people out from academic, intellectual, emotional, and financial ditches. Sir was temperamental and quick at throwing tantrums, but never failed to apologize and was quick to forgive. Whatever paint or color people threw at him, the white canvas behind every painting was pure and one piece. Sir's life was poetry itself, never bowing to old conventions, always seeking a new point of exploration with the freedom to say new things in new ways. Always an industrious person, Sir was very willing to be unsalaried as long as he could teach. It was almost like I was digging for gold and found gold in Rajani sir, from poetry to theater to writing. It is such a blessing to be loved by the best. Sir never took any act of kindness for granted. He was very often overwhelmed with gratitude. And in his own words, all good things coming to an end are rounded off with a vote of thanks. And I am truly grateful for the gift of his life. I will always miss the archetypal teacher and friend that Rajani sir was. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I may not be wrong when I say that for us UTN students, Rajani sir's picture without you is like almost incomplete. Thank you so much, ma'am. I now next welcome Professor T. Sengadir. He has been heading the mathematics department of CUTN since its very beginning and has been a close acquaintance to Rajani sir. I request him to take over. Please, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Please continue.
Thank you. So I remember his affectionate words to me. Enna thambi urpalaya, enna thambi sapalaya. That is how sometimes he would address me as thambi in Tamil. And whenever I think of him, two words come to my mind: affection and passion. He was always affectionate towards students, which I also believe in. And so my friendship with him reinforced this belief. And then he is very, very passionate about his subject. And I am one who believes that language is very, very important, even if you are a mathematician. In fact, I was introduced to PG Widows not by any English teacher, but by my mathematics teachers. I enjoy reading. Of course, I don't go into this very serious literature, but light reading. But even that is very, very, very useful. And when the mathematics students, took part in his place and had a good time, it made me very, very, very happy. And see, I keep telling students that they should read at least storybooks, Enid Blyton or Ponniyin Selvan, something. I keep telling them. And it's rather unfortunate that many students have to be told to read these books these days. And I remember one or two incidents which let me try to tell you here. A student came from Telangana to appear for the entrance examination, and he came 1 week in advance. And somehow he came, and he was a very poor student, and so he had to be made to stay in the hostel, and Professor Rajani took care of him very well. I mean, this is one example of how he can be very helpful for students. And then I remember our trip to Velangandi. I don't drive very confidently. But it was because of Rajani and his friends. I think there was another car driven by Professor Lakshmanan. I had to follow him. But I took my car with his friends, and we all went to Velangandi, and we had a great time. And then after we met in the old campus, so we would go round and round the campus, as if it was a temple. And I remember, the student. I'm not a big cricket player, but I enjoy watching him playing with the students. And then our tea sessions in the Krishna canteen always enjoyable. And he would always, buy some laddus for me. Sabdu, tambi, sabdu, laddu sabdu. He would buy laddu. And I have invited him for lunch many times. Somehow he refused to come, but he would insist that if at all he comes, he would eat only rasam sadam, and he doesn't want anything more than rasam sadam for lunch. That was his love for the local, so-called local food. And my family, we had to go. We wanted to go to Ooty. And his family was in Coimbatore. He was not there, but he made all arrangements for our family to stay with his family in Coimbatore. So it was a very enjoyable experience. Let me. I have to do some plagiarism now. What A.R. Venkatachalapati said, during a meeting. Let me plagiarize that. So before that, let me tell you something, and then I'll go for that. during when we were in the old campus, there was a book exhibition in Delhi. So many faculty of CUTN, we went to that exhibition, for buying books. It was a paid vacation for all of us, and all of us were book lovers, and we took a flight back and forth, and we stayed in Delhi for 2 or 3 days. We went around the various bookshops, and then we tried to buy some books. It was a very interesting experience. And suppose today I get an opportunity to stay in a fancy hotel, and if I am allowed to take one person with me, I would rather take Rajani, and may not be my wife. I would prefer to go to Delhi and spend some time with Rajani talking about books. And he was a big fan of Tamil films also. So, and I don't know. I mean, he told me that he was offered a job in where my father was working. So, in case he continued to be there, perhaps now I may be in the English department. He might have become a great friend of my father with a very good probability, and it is likely that I might have taken up English. I think with these few words, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sengadar. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Now I invite Dr. Rajendran to share his thoughts on Professor Rajani.
Okay. I'm trying to. I am not able to start my video.
Hello, Dr. Rajendran.
Yeah. Are you now? You hear my voice?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to switch on my video. I couldn't do that. Can you limit this? Okay. Okay. Wait. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, sir.
At the outset, good evening to all the Professor Rajani team members. At the outset, I would like to thank Professor Sanjay and Dr. Professor Madhurima for catalyst for this event, organized successfully for this event. I'm Dr. Rajendran, Assistant Professor in Chemistry, Central University of Tamil Nadu. As many of friends pointed out this event, they are academically associated with Professor Rajani. As Professor Sengadhir and myself, more attached with Rajani personally rather than academic. After listening Dr. Monica's speech, I'm almost unable to speak out. Almost my voice blocked. He is that much emotional one. Anyway, I am managing. He is a few remembrance, and I call the time I spent with Professor Rajani. Fortunately, I had opportunity to meet him and had associated with him from 2010 to 2015 when he worked as faculty, guest faculty in CUTN. I thank Professor Sanjay for giving this opportunity. It was associated with Professor Rajani. Otherwise, it would haven't happened. Start from our early stage. He used to name me a Maplai. Maplai in English, the groom. He called me like that. That time I was a bachelor. So some of our colleagues, asked him, why are you calling him as Maplai? He looked like Maplai, and that's why I call him Maplai. That word is really touching me. No one, even my friends, they're not used to call me that. Even a faculty, senior faculty colleague, used to call me as Maplai. That much of association we had. So it means the bond we had. Even after I marriage, he used to call me Maplai. Sir, asked, sir, now I married, still you are calling me Maplai. He said, you are always Maplai. Used to, like Professor Sengar said, Joe Villa Bisser. He never has that kind of bridge and barrier. Sometimes during business hour he used to call me Tambi. Even business hour he used to call me Maplai like that.
much of association we had. Like no, you never see a person who dedicated whole life for a student. Okay, it's very difficult, very rare. So in science, you can say Professor Abdul Kalam. So no, even humanities, you can name Professor Rajani, I could say. So whole time, 24 hours in 7, 24 to 7 is dedicated his life for no students. I learned from him actually how to dedicate our life to know the students. Students are our main like no, they are the main pillar of the university for any education. If their students are there, not there in any institution, so we are not there. So we know no one wanted. Okay, students are not the institution, not there in the institution. So they are the main pillar of the institution. So he dedicated most of life for the students. He lived with the students, stayed with the student hostel. He played with the students. Where he spent his life with the students. I learned from him. We have played together cricket. And how many of you know? I don't know. Okay, he's a fine player of the cricket. Very difficult to bowl out. Very difficult to bowl out. Just much precise the batsman. If you stand before stumps, it's very difficult to talk with the stump. That much team player. I would say he's a young man living in age of 8 years. I would always say that much young and energetic man with all positive energy. Whatever you ask, he never say no. He's okay. Tambi, do that. We'll do that. Don't do it like that. But before even when I was in a bachelor, another gentleman with us, Lakshman, we have to recall this too. He's also a very nice gentleman. Both of them has very good association. And Monica, you can see all the three members in the campus: Monica, Lakshman, Professor Rajman, and Professor Rajani. You also sometimes use bilingual. If Professor Rajani happened to be in CU10 and Monica was there, you wouldn't know departed from this. So Monica took care of him that much. When she was worked with him, then he was so happy. He has some kind of positive energy. I missed that. And after heard, after 2015, he moved to Bardar University. I met him like 2015 September in Bardar University when I attended one orientation program. That's my last meeting. After that, I didn't have opportunity to meet him. Then over phone I called over him. Then when I was bachelor, something I share some personal things. I want to eat rasam type mean kolambra, fish curry kolam like that. He likes rasam. Nice Professor Sengidir pointed out. He likes very watery kind of thing. Then we call some of the English students. Those students are well associated with me, like Karthik, Saranya, some students are there. Then call the students, Lakshman and Monica, those things. Like Monica would recall those days. We prepared 50 over the home when I was a bachelor. We had together. Even after my marriage, he used to call my wife mommy, ask mommy to prepare some food. Then we had that much personal relationship we had. We don't have much academic thing, but I also benefited from him. I asked her to correct my proposals. I sent my proposal to Swiss National Science Academy. After he corrected, I got selected. And I was there 3 months. So, I thought, because of Professor Rajani is, vetted my proposal, I gone through it. Okay. That much thing, he also taught me many things. Whenever he spoke or he gave a talk, then I used to listen him. It's nice to watch his words. It's nicely, so that most of our first year students are benefited things. We are stuck up time. I would like to conclude. Right now, even sir, you are deported from this year, but you are living in our hearts. So I worship our Almighty to show all the rest in peace to you, sir. I miss you a lot physically, but your memory is always living in our heart. Okay, thank you for the opportunity given to me. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Rajendran. The first time I came to CUTN, I remember seeing Dr. Rajendran playing cricket with Dr. Rajani, and that was a sight which I had never seen before. That was very interesting times. Those were. So now I call upon Dr. Arul. Dr. Arul, yes, Dr. Arul is here. Dr. Arul, would you share your thoughts with us?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, even though it's morning here for me. I thank the organizers, the CUTN people, and Monica for this opportunity to to speak at this event. I feel honored. I left India in 1994, so and my friendship with Rajani as well. Of course, I continued as friends, but so this has necessarily, to do with when I was in MCC, and this is also a kind of a personal memory. So forgive me if it is not, if it doesn't ring a bell for people here. So I just want to acknowledge Rajani's family here. Kishore is here, Manoj is here. Meera Rajani is here. Meera Rajani has been updating us in the last 3 weeks. Thank you, Meera. I also want to acknowledge my MCC colleagues here, Ganesh, Nirmal, Venkatramanan, Jagin Kurin, Geeta is here, and quite a few others, of course. I don't know if May remembers me. I was there when she played in Streetcar Named Desire. I did write something, but it seems everything that I wrote has been said. But I just want to touch on a few things. My condolences to all whom Rajani's life touched. He was a charismatic man and made many friends in his life. He was also a remarkable man. He left a lasting mark on all those friends, while he himself seemed somewhat unaffected by them. Not that he was unfeeling or unresponsive. He valued friendships and reciprocated them fully. I merely mean that his influence on his friends was greater than their influence on him. None of his friends, I'm sure everyone here in the Zoom, the viral room here, minded that a bit. You simply ceded that ground to Rajani. He was larger than life. I was quite a close friend to Rajani for about 12 years, 6 as a student and 6 as his colleague, both at MCC. He was in his early 40s, and I was just 18 or 19 when I first met him. I came in 1984, like Ganesh, Professor Ganesh. We were an unlikely pair. He was a campus superstar at the height of his popularity and power. Me, a poor Tamil medium kid from the district, I was from Salem, who was overwhelmed by the Anglophone, the English-speaking culture of MCC, typified by Rajani himself. He did speak Tamil, but unmistakably like a non-native speaker, though he knew all the swear words in Tamil, much to the delight of his college kids. Perhaps that combination of Anglophone high culture and a salty Tamil colloquialism is what made him so accessible to everyone. And he lived on campus, mysteriously single. There was a lot of speculations about that, of course, though he was quite popular with the ladies. Long hair and good looks would do that, yes, but there was something else about him. His unaffected nonchalance, his undeniable intellectualism, his fine temper, even though sometimes he was temperamental, and that obvious sincerity in his demeanor. Excuse me. I suppose he liked my love of English, or probably sympathized with my obvious un-MCC-like background, or he liked the fact that I just liked his company and was also quiet, at least for the first 2 years, when my spoken English was not very good. He also used me as a prompter for his plays, like Geeta. So we hit it off. So he and I lived in the same hall, St. Thomas Hall. So after 4, I would come from classes, go for a run, etc., etc. And then he and I would be, we have a dinner together, and then we would usually go for a movie or go around the campus. The campus was fantastic, as you probably know. And the night walks in the campus, we would go to other professors' houses, have coffee, etc. So I was with him, from from about 5 o'clock till we went to bed. And we would regularly watch 3 movies a week, only because there were 3 theaters in Tampa. We would go to almost all of them. However bad it was, once I remember we went to MR Theater, which is really a bad theater. So we went there. The guy, who was at the ticket critical, the guy who let us in, he said, "Sir, please, the padam bayangara boru sir, varadinga." Rajani said, "No, illa, ayyo, vanduta paathu." As it happened, the movie was such a dog that we had to leave in the middle. Of course, sir, na prove sonna sir. It was really, really. So I was, yeah, it was quite an experience. So we became friends. When I finished my MBA, he encouraged me to do my MA. When I finished that, he offered to be my supervisor for my MPhil dissertation. When I finished that, he championed me for a job at MCC. When I became his colleague, he told me to get the hell out of MCC and go to America or Canada for my PhD, which I did after 6 years. Excuse me. I have mourned for Rajani a couple of times before. So this has been a continuous process for me. When I left MCC and went out to Canada in 1994, I hadn't realized how much I would miss him, and MCC, of course. In the 12 years that I had spent with him, I had developed a Rajani-like disdain towards outward expression of love or sentimentality. For him, it would seem that out of sight often meant out of mind. He would hardly be in touch with friends, but he would resume friendships as soon as they are back in his life. The first year in Canada showed me what a vain affectation it was for me. I missed him almost as much as I missed my parents and siblings. But at least I wrote to my parents regularly. So I did not write to Rajani at all or phone him, right? Thinking that it was very un-Rajani-like. But the first 2 years in MCC was filled by kind of mourning, a kind of melancholia. The second time that I mourned was when he retired from MCC. I almost always visited my alma mater whenever I was in India. But to see it without Rajani was very painful for me. More painful was to see him out of it, living in an apartment in Taramalai sometimes, living at a residence in Thiruvarur, or fighting with a landlord near Bharatiya University in Coimbatore a year later, and finally languishing at a very very empty rental house near Sulur last January. Whenever I used to come to India, I would go spend at least a night with him, wherever he was. It was as if, we never left at all. So it was really, really difficult. It's kind of disorienting for me to see him outside of MCC. MCC was just and Rajani was MCC in a lot of ways for me. It was like the king of MCC doing rounds outside his palace in some painful disguise. Why? I would ask. He said, he just couldn't give up teaching, especially his beloved drama. And from what I heard and what I'm hearing now, and during my visits after his retirement, and what I hear from you all, it looked like he lived a very full and meaningful life after MCC, of course. But I nevertheless mourned the passing of MCC, that MCC Rajani that is etched in my mind for many years. But those deaths were merely the inevitable passage of time, of course. I felt keenly, but of course I knew that. And of course I made my peace with that. But this gap is huge. What is happening now. If his MCC life was long and a unique influence on several generations of students, his post-MCC life, spent at several institutions, now seems like a great monument to his dedication to literature, drama, and a life of service that transcended institutional affiliations and professional life. I was a witness to a fair bit of his first life. I marvel at the monumentality of his second life now. My mourning for this particular death, which is so cruel, untimely, and so final, is for the passing of a great lover of life. Now, I've been thinking about what Rajani's life means in totality. I think he loved life in its essence. His fascination with young people, especially unaffected youth, like I probably was in 1982, like each and every one of you here when he first met him, bespeaks a love of the essence of life in its pure form, pure and best form. His ascetic simplicity is a manifestation of that love for the essence of life.
Could you wind up soon, please?
Oh.
Yeah, please.
Okay. In his death, let us remember and cherish how he loved life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arul. Now we move on to present a recreation of The Drowned Man, which has been put together by the few very first students that joined Rajani sir's drama squad in CUTN, presenting The Drowned Man.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Waterfront Repertory Theatre welcomes you to this evening's production.
Just getting a little night air to clear my mind. That's good. That's wonderful. It's so refreshing. It revitalizes my entire body. But my mind is blocked. I have no thoughts, no ideas. Most unusual for me. Most times, they fill up my brain and overflow it like a cascading fountain. And tonight, nothing. And still, I have the urge to write. These things happen to all men in my profession at one time or another. Writer's block, we call it. No panic. It will pass soon. Wait. Wait, an idea's coming. Hold on. Yes. Yes. Terrible. Bad idea. Not only was it a bad idea, I've already written it. And it turned out awful. False alarm. Sorry I disturbed you. I must go home. Tomorrow's another day. I must get back home and to bed before these things get serious.
You, sir? Can I have a word with you, sir?
Who's there? I can't see you in the dark.
Evening, sir. I was just wondering, sir, if you would be in the mood for a little entertainment.
Entertainment? I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about.
Sure you do, sir. Entertainment, amusement, so to speak. A little diversion, if you know what I mean.
I think I do know what you mean, and I'm not interested. Go on, off with you. You should know better than to make such a proposal to a gentleman.
You have never witnessed anything like this before. That I promise you. This is a once-in-a-lifetime offer. Not even a little bit curious.
Curiosity is the nature of my profession, but I try to keep it morally elevated. Excuse me.
Perhaps you're right, sir. On second thought, this might be too much for a gentleman of your sensitivities.
Wait.
Aha! Got you with that last one, didn't I?
I'm just asking, mind you, just exactly what is this entertainment you speak of?
Well, sir, how would you like to see a drowned man?
I beg your pardon?
A drowned man? A man with his lungs filled up with salt water and stone dead from drowning. How much would you pay to see that?
Pay? Pay to see a drowned man? Are you insane? I wouldn't look at a drowned man if they paid me. Why would I want to see a drowned man? What's the point in looking at a man who drowned? You're mad. Get out of here.
3 rubles, sir. That's all it will cost you. 3 rubles to see him first before he's in the water, and then in the agonizing act of drowning, and then the grand finale, the man already drowned, rest his soul.
What are you saying? The man isn't drowned yet? That he's still alive and well?
Not only alive and well, sir, but dry as a bone and standing before you. I am the drowned man, sir.
You? You are going to drown yourself for 3 rubles? You expect to charge me for your own suicide? I must get away from this lunatic.
Oh, no. You've got it all wrong, sir. I don't actually drown. I impersonate a drowned man. I jump into the icy cold water, splash around a bit, flail my arms, yell for help a few times, and go down under and come floating head down, all puffy like. It sends a chill down your spine. 3 rubles for individual performances, special rates for groups. Show starts in 5 minutes.
I can't believe I'm actually discussing the price of an admission to a drowning.
You missed the whole point, sir. This is not some sort of cheap thrill. This is a rich tableau filled with social implications. A drama, not tragic, but ironic in view of its comic features.
Comic? What's comic in it?
Oh, well, I blow up my cheeks and bulge my eyes out and yell for help in a high, squeaky voice. Sounds like a pig squealing. I'm the only one on the waterfront who can do it, sir.
Do you actually expect me to pay to hear an underwater pig squealer?
I've just had a very successful season, sir. Sold out in July. Shall I book you now for the dinner show?
Dinner show? What do you mean by dinner show?
Oh, I jump in, flail around a bit, and throw you a nice fish. I think the halibuts are running now, sir.
Why do I stand here listening to this?
I wish you'd make up your mind soon, sir. In 5 minutes, that restaurant over there is going to throw its garbage in the water. Then it's messy. I have my pride, you know.
To hell with your pride. It doesn't prevent you from making a living imitating a deceased swimmer.
Oh. You sure know how to strike at a man's vulnerable point, sir. That is cruel, sir.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be cruel.
You completely overlook the finer aspects to my profession, sir. Look here, sir. Have you ever seen a coal miner at the end of the day? Dirt and grime all over his body. Soot sticking into his nostrils, gets into his ears. Black grit on his teeth. Oh, how disgusting. Or a barber who goes home at night with the cuttings of other people's hair sticking out from his hands. It gets in his bread, his soup. Oh, it's nauseating. Do you know what a surgeon puts his fingers?
Oh, please.
Or a farmer his feet. Oh, every man who works has to eventually touch something filthy, sir. I, on the other hand, deal with water. Water is clean, it's purifying. Oh, it's wet. I don't have to take a bath when I come home at night, sir. I've done it, sir. Can you say the same, sir?
Do you think I'm going to discuss my toilet habits with you? Oh my God, you are infuriating. There must be a carriage around here. Cabby,
you'll regret it. You'll be back here one night, dying to see a good drowning, and I'll be gone. This is my last week here. I close on Monday. Next week, I'm in Yalta.
now there is a police officer. If you don't leave me alone, I'll have you arrested for soliciting.
I am not soliciting. I'm in the maritime entertainment business.
Drowning is not maritime entertainment. You are a waterfront lunatic. Officer!
Okay, fine, I'm going. But I'll tell you one thing, the drowning business isn't what it used to be.
Can I help you, sir?
There's a man behind the docks. There. He's been pestering me all evening. I wouldn't be surprised if he were deranged.
A lot of bad characters around these docks at night, sir. A gentleman like you shouldn't be wandering around here. Well, what was he pestering you about?
Well, I'm warning you. You're going to find it strange. He wanted to charge me 3 rubles to watch him drown. Can you imagine?
Strange? It's outright thievery. It's not worth more than 60 kopecks. You can get as fine as a drowning as you would want to see and not pay a penny more. 3 rubles? What now?
Officer, you seem to miss the point.
There's 2 brothers in the next pier, sir. For 1 ruble each, they will give you a double drowning. You have to know how to bargain with these men, sir. Get your money's worth.
It's not a question of price.
3 rubles? Why? The other day, right over there, 14 men acted out an entire shipwreck for 3 rubles. And on a good day, you can get a whole navy going down for 10 rubles. Yes, sir. 60 kopecks. That's all I'd pay for a good drowning. Stick to your price, sir, and have a good evening.
It has come. It has finally come. The day the world has gone mad has arrived at last.
I see the officer is gone. What did you tell him, sir?
Tell him? I told him the truth, that you were mentally unbalanced. Unfortunately, he was a little more mentally unbalanced than you.
Still, I appreciate you're not causing me any trouble. And in gratitude, I'll reduce my price to an all-time low, 80 kopecks.
80? 80, you little thief? You conniving, wretched, deceiving thief? I won't pay you more than 60.
60? 60 kopecks for a drowning? So where's my profit? My towels cost me 40 kopecks and another 40 for the fella who fishes me out. Yeah, I'd be losing money. What's the point? I might as well stay under.
You can't cheat me. 60 kopecks for drowning. Take it or leave it.
You're a hard man, sir. A hard man. 60 kopecks it is. I pray to God my son doesn't want to be a drowner.
30, 40, 50, 60. There's your money. Now, where shall I stand?
Right on the edge of the dock, sir. Right up close. That's where you'll see all the action.
It's a bit dark down here. You sure I'll be able to see well?
That's what makes it so eerie. The eerier, the more entertaining. All the actions in the last 10 seconds anyway. Well, then here I go. I almost forgot. When you see me come up for the third time, shout at the top of your lungs, Popnishevsky! Popnishevsky!
Popnishevsky? Who is Popnishevsky?
Oh, he's the fellow who jumps in after me, sir. I can't swim, sir.
You can't swim? Are you telling me you're going to drown yourself without knowing how to swim?
Oh, that's what makes it so exciting, sir. Popnishevsky always waits till the very last second before pulling me out. Oh, he's in that restaurant having a drink. Popnishevsky. Don't forget the name, sir. I hope you enjoy the show. If you like it, tell your friends. As we say, in the soup. I got
over here. A little toward me. I can't see you too well. Good. Very good. Yes. Well, that's enough of that. I don't want to see that part anymore. I don't have all night. Can you drown now?
Somebody, I'm drowning.
Do you hear me? I would like to have you drown now. Where the devil is he? There you are. That's the third time, isn't it? Oh, good heavens. What's that fellow's name?
Like the play, please tell the whole world about it. But if you haven't, keep it a dark secret and take it with you to the grave.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes, thank you. So I hope you all enjoyed the play. Now we have had a lot of messages about Professor Rajani coming through in the past few days, especially during the registration periods and all that. And we seriously had a lot of volume of content to go through. So we have tried putting comments from CUTN aside and try to focus on um, comments from Professor Rajani's colleagues pre-CUTN as well. So we would like to also show a small voiceover clip um, which of these messages. Allow me to play the video again.
Tejas, are you?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sharing the screen right now.
Yes, please.
I hope it is visible right now.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Professor Rajani was a teacher who could easily identify talents in students and nurture them in an excellent way. I was surprised to see how students, whom I thought to be of ordinary make, turned out to be of extraordinary stuff in his hands, and an indefatigable teacher too. He will go on in classes for hours together. When I once said I felt tired, he smiled and said he was 10 years older than I was and never felt tired. In organizing the drama meets, he was fair to all institutions, taking care to visit neighboring colleges and earnestly persuading them to participate. And to my surprise, he met with success. Though close to his students, he never compromised on standards. He was a man of deep conviction, recluse like, but knew the day to day world more than we do, and had strong views, though he politely refrained from avowing them. I envied the nonchalance with which he took life and the problems he faced in a town like Tiruvarur. When I met him last in Chennai at a wedding reception, he was not his usual ebullient soul and showed signs of resignation. I could learn a lot about the aesthetics of theatre from his productions, but he kept himself aloof, giving us the impression that dramas shape themselves, and an obtrusive artist. It is all his own, but he took care to erase signs of his presence. It is of as much greatness as it is of any artist worth the name.
My PG student Danny, who did MPhil in MCC, shared with me that Rajani once asked in an internal test a question that amounted to something like, discuss Girish Karnad's Tukla as an example of what a play should not be. Later on, Professor R. Nedumaran confided with me, அவன் என் கிளாஸ்மேட் தான்டா தியாகராஜா காலேஜில் கீழே விழும்போது கூட அலாஸ்னு கத்துனா எவன்டா ஸ்டூடெண்ட் எலெக்ஷனில் அவனுக்கு ஓட்டு போடுவான். Much later, I listened to his lecture in an FTP refresher course in NKU. I was convinced that he was a self-wrought iconoclast. He talked about a poem on an aged cabaret dancer. This was what Rajani sir was for me. Then, MGM College Pollachi invited me to judge a drama competition. So when I reached the college, I was taken aback by the presence of Rajani sir there. When he spoke, he in his usual style spoke about how we should move beyond Shakespeare. The program was over. He was so respectful to me. We both entered the principal's room. By then, I was exhausted. I wasn't able to hear the soft voice of Rajani sir and the principal. I told them I was hearing impaired. They couldn't believe it at first, because as long as I was energetic, I could hear clearly. It was not condescending, nor the feeling of fear being inferior to you in some way or the other. I could read so much of love and concern and worry in Rajani sir's eyes. He put his hand over my shoulder and spoke of something none of my colleagues had ever spoken. He said, Ilango, don't be adamant. I know people like you would love to enjoy what you are. I know your type. You are too proud of changing yourself for others. But I'm telling you, you are very important for the student community. There are so many modern gadgets for hearing. Please use them. Let this be no impediment for you. I want you to do this. All this happened while I took him back in my car to his relatives in Coimbatore. When he asked me to stop the car and got out and walked away in his blue jeans and chappals, I could sense that I had met a loving person, a man who could see a son in a young man he admires. Bye, sir. By the way, I'm using an advanced technology hearing aid now, which cost me very dear because I cannot be adamant anymore.
I remember my days back in WCC Chennai when I first discovered my voice on the stage, the power of performance, and understanding and embracing the community of theatre with my peers. It became my life. I write this as a tribute to Rajani sir, a mentor and a director whom I deeply respect and remember. I cried every night I performed Letters to a Student Revolutionary because of how real it felt to me, a mere actor. Having worked with him on this play gave me a glimpse of the heart-wrenching students' protest in Tiananmen Square. The power of voices coming together and the importance of remembering and retelling history through stories and performances are some things that I will always carry with me, especially in these times when voices of dissent are being silenced. Thank you, Rajani sir, for the powerhouse that you were. Rest in peace, dear teacher.
Rajani sir is my inspiration forever. Not only his teaching, but also his time management, kindness, his book collection. When I think of writing a note about Rajani sir, my mind and soul would be flabbergasted. It is flowing and searching for words around my mind. Sir frequently would ask me, "What is this in Tamil da?" asking for equivalent Tamil words for English words. Sir called each of them child, but in my case, it was Simone. When he called my name, I felt so happy, and I felt how my name has a style of its own. I loved the word Simone with all my heart, whenever he called my name. In my batch at CUTN, I was special for Rajani sir. I was the only person included in the theatre group without participating in drama. I used to ride Sir's scooter at CUTN. Poetry recitation, only Sir and me in his hostel room. Sir gave me extra and minimized notes, only for me. He even shared his food.
If it were not for Rajani sir, I would not have even thought of theatre. Sir had summoned me to join the theatre group on my second day at CUTN. Most of my friendships happened in that group. While I was ill, Sir had literally taken care of me, taking me to the hospital, ensuring that I was taking the medicine and getting better. My happiest moments at CUTN are because of Sir and Monica ma'am. Many of us could feel at home at CUTN because of Rajani sir.
For things didn't work out so well at the beginning. You didn't want me to act. I sat there with the prompters, prompting, perturbed like an eager kid wanting to join the choir. I knew the song very well. I knew how to fly with the drama troupe once or twice like a croaking crow on your shoulder. Bah! But you didn't want me to act. You asked me to sing. For you knew what we were, didn't you? You fixed our wings, stitched our broken fins, and set our feet straight that we might climb mountains. For things were simple for you. for your blue jeans and the tanned polo. You'd rap about in the class and back it up at stage with a gentle smile. Just like that. The old familiar faces, Shakespeare and Plath, and the old rugged Eliot with his plaintive numbers. Yep, they were there with us, and suddenly it was the wasteland, or the dark lady clinking glasses with our shaky boy. Oh boy, and the birthday party? We rolled our sleeves past elbows and waited for the latecomers. Well, that was theatre enough for us. Us that swam and flew and could never act. For things never worked out so well at the beginning. That's when everything started. Pa, you walked with us, and now we are walking with your memory, hoping to get a glimpse of you.
Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. Then worm shall try that long preserved virginity. How had you scared me whenever you taught Sylvia Plath? You are more like a candle. I'm burning both the sides, child. Don't know when will I stop burning. You will live long. The energy you possess until the end of the day is amazing. Why don't you retire? Take rest. I will teach till my last breath. Who will get a teacher who spent all life for literature, for students, a wonderful soul, a beacon of sincerity, undeserving to see you at the last moment? Miss you. Let nature sing for you. Let the birds chirp. Let you be safe in heaven. Yes, the curtain called. For the one last time, may your soul and body rest in peace.
And with that, we come to a close of this particular event of remembering Professor Rajani. I am duty bound to thank each and every one of you who has willingly participated and made this event memorable. The panelists and my fellow CUTN friends who have contributed to this event and spoken today. Like the rest of you, I am feeling very emotional, and my special thanks go out to the students, the ex-students of CUTN, Professor Rajani students, who have made this event possible with so much of recording and late night. Like, we have been cross-messaging till 4 a.m. trying to figure out how to do the editing. The plays and the poem were recreated with across continents. This would not have been possible but for the cooperation of the students. And I also thank them for stepping back and letting Professor Rajani's other friends and colleagues from other institutes to take center stage. I'm going to miss Professor Rajani. Every time he saw me, he would say, "Ungla pata romba bayama irukuma." Both of us knew he was such a liar. Thank you, one and all. I will be closing the meeting in another 2 minutes, so you can kindly leave.